is Amy Lillard, and I am the Executive Director of both Washington FilmWorks and WhipSmart. If you don't know WhipSmart, it is our new partner organization to Washington FilmWorks, and it is a trade association to support creative workers and creative businesses. I am delighted to be here today to chat with Leilani Lewis. Leilani Lewis was kind enough to write our first how-to guides for WhipSmart, and one of them was titled Anti-Racism Action Guide for White Creatives. That was one of the ones she wrote. And the one that we're here to talk about today is called Caring for Yourself While Working as a BIPOC Creative. So welcome, Leilani.
Thank you.
I'd love to start by just, having you introduce yourself. I know you have this long, rich career of doing all kinds of work. So tell us about your history.
I was born here in Seattle, raised partly just outside of Detroit, and came back as a young teen. I am the first in my family to go to college. Went as a later student to get my art history degree. And after that, I started working for a museum. I really wanted to work for a museum. I got involved in a project called the Northwest African American Museum, which eventually turned into a wonderful, beautiful community gathering space. I worked there for a significant amount of time, building a lot with the creative community, especially the African American artist community and many other communities, building a lot of bridges, working in partnership during that time with the museum, a very special time. And then about 5 years ago, I joined the Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity at the University of Washington, working on the Race and Equity Initiative put forth by the president of the university, Alamari Kase, and have been recently, most recently, appointed Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the university's advancement organization, which is its fundraising and philanthropic organization.
Well, great. That is a whole lot of great stuff. So, well, thank you for joining us today. As I said, I wanted to chat with you about the piece you wrote called Caring for Yourself While Working as a BIPOC Creative. You've just made everything so approachable and actionable. Those are two things that come to mind when I think of the how-to guides that you wrote. But today, I just would really love to dig into your personal background, your experiences as an arts professional and a consultant. And those rooms that you were in, or those virtual spaces that you were in where you were sitting on grant panels or evaluating resumes and being on arts boards. I would love for you to talk a little bit about some of the ways that structural racism shows up in those environments specifically.
In these processes, unfortunately, many of them haven't been revised or updated. I mean, some of them have, many in the city of Seattle have, and some other spaces, but many of them have not been revised or updated to accommodate for the applications that that allow for a lot of different ways of expression. So I see bias show up at every part of the application. This is I'm doing a circular motion with my hand because I'm not in person, so people can't see these things. It's part of a cycle. So from the moment they put out a call, the criteria for a submission and the labor involved in that, to the language that is used within the criteria. Does it require, things that require resources, things that require a lot of time? Is that scaled to the amount of award that's being given? Often not. It's from the beginning of it and who designs that informs much of the process. Probably informs who's selected, who's on the committee, probably informs the final decision and the discussion, or shapes the discussion within committee about who is selected and who is not. And then how the award is given and announced. So there's bias at each part of the system, a system speaker. So each part of the system, there's not a lot of representation at the decision-making power in those rooms when those decisions are made about how the process is going to go. And it ends up being teed up in favor of certain groups and disenfranchising others. People won't apply if they don't have the certain technology that is required to make the certain document, to make the certain portfolio that the grant requires. And that's not taken into consideration. So then you just lose people and get people out. So bias can show up anywhere, any part of that.
So two very specific pieces of advice that you gave in this piece. for BIPOC creatives were, one, be easy to find, and two, find out about the process. Can you talk about both of those and why they're important?
Yes. So being easy to find, it's harder than you think. Everybody has advice about the platforms that you should be on. But if you have one single place to have your work, so I've done project management for major, big projects where I'm looking for artists to do XYZ. And I will do the work. I will do the work of going across platforms, from your Instagram to your website to your whatever other website to the Facebook. I can do that legwork, but a lot of folks won't. You do have to be across a lot of platforms, unfortunately. But if you do have a single hub and everything else leads to that hub, it's just easier to be found and easier to be contacted and easier to get the job, easier to get the gig. And that's across industries. It's across everything. And I have a lens into the white arts community as well, and how the white artist networks operate, and how they get large commissions. And it is because they become skilled, many of them, at this process that was made for them. It was built by folks for them, by them and for them. And when things are built by and for this specific group, it can feel very daunting and exclusionary because you don't know the process, and you don't know the people behind the process. But you can ask, and you almost have to be, this is like the self-advocacy piece, you almost have to be aggressive in finding out the process. Like if you're shut out, somebody is not talking to you, find somebody else, ask if they talk to you, or ask them the process for XYZ. Is it that you just know somebody who knows somebody? Oh, if that's the case, that's all right. Now you know me. My name is XYZ. I do this type of work. I'm pretty amazing. But keep me in mind. But if you're interested in doing something, you gotta go after it and find out the process for doing it. If people are reluctant to just be an open door to you.
And that probably applies to everything, like getting a grant, trying to get a job, get a gallery show. It applies to everything. Learn the process. Who are the gatekeepers, as we were talking about in a previous conversation. Like, figure that out, right?
Yeah, and it's difficult. You can ask your community. That's why I try to be a resource to folks, and there are a lot of folks like me who are resources, and probably even more networked and understanding, especially of the art world. But if you even see an artist that's having some success in a certain area, ask them who they talk to about their. That's the beauty of really being part of that being part of a network, because again, it's not just learning the process, and it's not that white artists just know, but they do ask, and they have an easier time asking because they're often networked with the people who created it.
But isn't it true also that everyone feels this way in some way, shape, or form, right? So you're not alone, right? This idea of like everyone needs to learn process, and everyone feels probably some anxiety about it in some way.
It's not so much so that way when something's made for you. When I know Black folks have made things and in excessive with an accessible mindset, like for other Black folks, because they understand the needs of the community and maybe some of the ways that communities need space to do something, they create 7 different ways to create an application. You can draw your idea, you can write your idea, you don't have to write it down on a piece of paper, you don't have to write this grant, you can send us your portfolio, you can do this, you can do that. You can have different modes, understanding that there are many ways that people communicate, and there are many ways that our communities have not been served in a way that allows them to do the things that other folks who have been resourced to do. And that's just because of, again, systemic and historical institutional racism. I know that. I can spot that. I know what that looks like and feels like. So yes, everybody does, but your proximity to what has been made for you and has historically excluded BIPOC people. So these are systems that have historically said, you are not to know the process, and we're not going to let you in even if you do know the process. So there's an anxiety there, and an actual distrust because there's an actual real history of exclusion. So yes, all people, but there are specific, real and felt reasons why it's not the case always for folks of color. And so we have to do some like other stuff.
In the piece, you said that BIPOC creatives often have to work with clients or seek work from places that have historically excluded BIPOC creatives. And then there may be room to take on a partnership and help initiate some change. But there's also this need in this process to care for yourself and set boundaries based on your own values in this environment. So it is literally like you're walking this line, what do you do? Like, what's your advice to a BIPOC creative who's navigating this dichotomy, if you will?
Yeah. If you're hired to do a job, you are not responsible for transforming the organization, the team, the institution to advise on diversity, equity, and inclusion. They need to hire somebody who does that. You are an artist. You are hired to do something that is per your contract, and that is all you're responsible for. What often happens is people get asked to do this extra labor for free. They ask to do extra consulting for free because they are maybe a person of color and coming into an organization or a team or a company that wants to change. But they have to invest in that change in ways that make sense and not rely on the fact that they brought in a BIPOC creative, not that and expect a lot more from that person, because they don't. Unless that person has said, this is what I do and would like to do, that's not something that should be expected. And it happens so frequently. And I feel that anybody, especially if you have been impacted and you're a person part of an impacted group, impacted by racism, that you have to take extra care to take care of yourself in this way. It's extremely important to preserve your mental health, your emotional health, in order to be a creative that, seeking success in their field, in their realm, whatever they do. Nurture their own creativity and they don't have to take on fixing everything. And I feel like that happens more often than not, and people don't feel empowered to say, no, I'm going to stick to the work that I'm doing. But you should hire somebody, a DEI consultant, or you should consider doing hiring somebody to do that, if that's not something that you do.
You also talk about the importance of contracts and getting things in writing. And what can BIPOC creators do to protect themselves and their creative work in that environment?
I'm just a believer in getting things in writing for the reasons I just said. Things can creep to other areas, especially if, an organization is striving to find their way and has a history of exclusion and now would like to flip that narrative. But contracts can help protect you in any space, even between peers, between collectives who are coming together to do a project. Just having, I've written things down on a napkin just to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is what you're going to do. If we ask anymore, we visit the napkin. Like, just to get some clarity can be very damaging to relationships when you feel disappointed by folks not upholding their the agreements that you believed in. And this happens, I've seen it happen over and over again. So ensuring that you are clear, you're clear about the pay, you're clear about what's expected for the pay, they're clear about your parameters. If you have any other extra things that you do, then you make sure that is in the contract before you do them. Don't do them and then expect it to go back in the contract. Be clear about all of it. It's really, really important. If they send you something and you don't agree with it, change it. There's a lot of ways that you can protect yourself. And I've seen relationships go and projects go really well and executed really well, and some that go sideways. And some of it has to do with the power dynamic. But you can tell you can tell anybody, you can say, no matter how much wealth or how much money they're paying you, they do not honor your work and they do not honor you, or respect your work or respect you, you have the right to walk away, or you have the right to stay and demand that respect. Any conversation or any approach to you about you doing something artistic for anyone else requires something written. and agreed upon, or recorded and agreed upon. It doesn't have to be written. There are so few scenarios, unless you're dealing, it depends on how you deal with your family and friends. There are few scenarios in business where I don't think that there should be an agreement.
Well, Leilani, we are, getting to the end of our time together for this video. But what's your parting thoughts and your sentiment?
Well, I just want to say that to any of the Black and Brown, Indigenous, POC creatives out there, you get to determine your path. Don't let white institutions and gatekeepers be the barometer of your success. You get to determine what that is. You get to determine your own success. But take care of yourself in that process. Take care of your emotional health. Take care of your physical health. Take care of you, and also, engage in collective care, engage in community care, and we can support and lift each other up, regardless of what anybody else is doing. We don't have to pay attention to anybody else. We can do it for ourselves. We can, and we will.
Well, thank you again, Leilani, for being so generous with your time and with all of the information that you shared with the creative community. And if you have not yet read this piece, you can find it on our website, which is bewhipsmart.org. And Leilani, thanks again for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Amy.